of Sam at one point at Guttman Community College. Since then, you graduated and went on to different colleges and stuff. But yeah, if you want to.
I'm Sade. I graduated from Hunter.
I graduated from Hunter too. I'm Sam. I'm just finishing up at Guttman. I still have like one course left, but yeah.
Hey, I'm Johnny Jado. I'm from Guttman at Hunter College.
You all did Hunter.
I think we all might be Hunter. I'm Bashir. I graduated from, transferred from Guttman to Hunter College. Recently graduated from Hunter with a bachelor's in political science and minor in international relations. So this right here is a poem written by me. This story was inspired by a roommate of mine from Gambia. He's a Soninke, like myself, our tribe from back home. And he came with his cousin. When I asked to interview him, I asked to interview both, but only him was able to agree to it because the cousin is still undocumented in the process of like getting documented. He doesn't want his name to be out there. I imagine there's a lot of immigrants, people out there who doesn't feel comfortable enough to share their stories. Dear fearless immigrant, in our darling dreams growing up in West Africa, we expected to be welcomed in shiny cars, people with open arms, and with the American dollar. Reality has proven much different. Your story kept me awake at night. I have watched you travel from Africa through Latin America, passing Mexican cartel, Colombian crime syndicates, and Brazilian coyotes to get to America. You spent days on wild road with no protection from gangs that wear police uniforms and rob you of only money you had. Police officials use their authority to torture you simply because you don't look like them. You spend days in custody in Mexico without any means of communication. On the American border, they held you for months, deny you of your freedom merely because of the place you were born, and for many of you, the God to whom you pray. While the weight of being an immigrant weighed on us today, you made it. We begin anew in the center of the world.
Okay, and just a general exercise disclaimer for later. Take note of like the stories and topics that we're talking about, and hold on to things that may be like impactful or that stand out as important to you, because we're gonna have like an open-ended short discussion later on. So short personal anecdotes and stories, if you're comfortable, are encouraged, but we ask that you keep your questions for the end.
As we stand on the shoulders of immigrant resilience and courage, we, the researchers before you today, seek to uncover and celebrate their stories. Voices from the Heart of Gotham, the Undergraduate oral history collection at Guttman Community College has uncovered the New York experience through the eyes of immigrants and working class communities of color. Narratives are collected by trusted loved ones, which provoke stories and memories that could only be evoked due to the intimacy between interviewers and interviewees. We embody the diversity of our city, and our project dives into the Black, Indigenous people of color, and immigrant communities that Guttman students come from, that we come from, to ask who are these people so influential to the character of our city? What obstacles have they faced, sacrifices have they made, and dreams have they pursued? And how have the dual traumas of pandemics and injustice transformed their identities?
So our presentation today will focus on ways Guttman Community College students and alumni through oral history have uncovered and honored the pain and determination of a largely working class immigrant communities and communities of color in difficult times. In addition, we're also going to delve into our personal growth as researchers and also address the ethical considerations that are inherent when recounting personal narratives of individuals by highlighting how our viewpoints kind of enhance the overall richness of this endeavor.
This work has shown that many immigrants came alone, and some without a family face in the city of 9 million. What awaits them is history etched in the fabric of New York, but rarely recorded as central to the American story. This project is designed, executed, and curated by us, the students at Guttman Community College, collectively working to challenge harmful narrative about the communities from which we and our classmates derive.
Now, taking ownership of the narrative. Through this project, our word and voice have a great impact on how the story we tell are heard by the public. The sentiment was echoed by interviewing a fellow student, which is a Bashir Bihara. When he was fair during the interview, the reality is when you are telling your story, you know better than someone else for you, because you are living through the experience. Only a diverse group of youth resources can unveil the joy and the obstacle that I have faced to get to college under the past few years. It's only fitting that the group of mostly immigrant communicated message going in this apply. It's a lot of originality that makes this work much more collective.
When we gathered for our collective analysis session, we struggled with questions of ethics. Whose stories are these? Do we have the right to publish with the people we interviewed, or are we engaging in trauma porn to tell the stories of immigrants and people of color in the United States? While all the technical aspects of informed consent had been followed, these deep questions about stories, representations, vulnerabilities lingered about our responsibility to correct the racist, xenophobic record on diversity in New York City, and our debt to honor the vulnerability and courage of our participants. Our research collective decided we had to write through these ethical questions with snippets of our own lives and our collective dialogue. When I, the daughter of immigrants, started writing prompts in January of 2022 to apply for colleges, I had stories in my heart and ethics on my mind. I began to reflect on these stories. I heard about my parents, about the obstacles they face, burdens they bear, and triumphs they experience. I began to notice just how much influence these had sculpting my character. As I sat in front of my keyboard prepared to tell a story of generational endurance that shaped me, I paused. I wanted to talk about my parents because they matter so much to me, but I did not want to take advantage of their struggle or pain for my personal gain. I ended up writing a poem on my personal issue with social anxiety, deciding that my parents' story did not belong to me. To this day, I wonder about the delicate practice of publishing people's stories in ways that honor but do not exploit them. The question of ethics comes up every time we want to share a story that isn't our own. The thought of accurately sharing narratives while expressing the positive attributes and the devastating struggles of people we love. Many of us read stories about people or hear them, and sometimes we forget about the person it belongs to. We watched our families struggle. These are not abstractions. We hope with the Oral History Project, and I would add my own history, is that we can step away from appropriating and into appreciating, to give credit to the journey and the struggle.
So I was really interested in the sociological implications as to why the archive is important. And I feel like that all points to the fact that the data is collected by and through our peers. So someone from a similar cultural or a demographic group who know what key concepts should be expanded upon in the broader body of work are to be recorded and added to the large quantity of qualitative data. And the content analysis of the work itself is analyzed by the transcribers and the writers of color that emphasizes one universal voice. A voice that is complex and nuanced, that's riddled with duality, but a common narrative that's unobstructed by reframing that's consciously and unconsciously done by the media that kind of cover up maybe those more important aspects of the story that we want to be told. This project is something where we immigrant and POC alumni of Guttman Community College independently control the process without the interference of it being consumed and commented on by the public and other researchers that aren't within the institution itself.
Many immigrants, activists, and working class New Yorkers have found common struggle in reviewing these testimonies while learning resistance strategies employed by others. We could have totally different backgrounds, but the obstacles that we face can be very similar. Racialized Otero's decades-old social struggles wrapped up in learning English can provide comfort through shared struggle to newly arrived immigrants. Otero explains, when you come to this country, they only speak English. If they didn't, they would make fun of you. Your accent, that's why there were so many people who were so scared of speaking English, because so many would make fun of you. Immigrants involved in this project have heard their stories I've heard their stories in these testimonies of complete strangers. Xavier, an immigrant from Ecuador, explained, I didn't really go out because I didn't speak the language, so nobody really talked to me, and I didn't speak to anybody. Being an immigrant, a fellow youth researcher recalled a story provoked by being confronted with this data. When I first got to the United States, not knowing much English, I listened to the people speaking English all around me, it was like an endless rattle in my ears. The drive to be here in the United States and pull through for their families is one of the things that can give immigrants the motivation to find ways to understand, learn, and speak English however they can. Fisaris, a fellow researcher, concurred, arriving from Benin at 16, he narrates, it wasn't easy. I lived in the projects and went to school there. It was really hard because I didn't speak any English. His interviewer followed, but this didn't discourage you in any ways. Fisaris restored, no it didn't.
For me personally, I feel a deep responsibility to educate and inspire those around me to share their stories in a safe space. Many people make their judgment, but I believe that these narratives can profoundly impact the lives of others. As a first-generation immigrant from Pakistan who moved to the United States in 2010, my life has undergone significant changes. My parents had dreams of a better life and more opportunities for their children in this new land. However, when I reflect critically on my experiences in this country, I can't ignore the challenges I faced simply because I'm an immigrant and a Muslim. In 2020, during the interview with Luis Hidalgo, I candidly expressed my initial bleak expectations for the U.S., fearing racism and discrimination at a young age. These fears were validated when I encountered ignorant comments from peers during my middle school years, some even making derogatory remarks about my culture and religion. This caused me to hesitate wearing a hijab despite my parents' wishes because I feared further isolation. As I grew older, I became aware that fearing isolation at school was the least of my worries. I started to understand that I wasn't the only one in my family who felt out of place and experienced the same isolation. Conducting an interview with my older sister for this project allowed us to delve into her perspective, sparking more candid discussions of our shared experiences. During our conversation, she recounted a distressing incident when she faced verbal harassment on the subway, with a white man aggressively insisting that she should leave the country. Besides personal experiences with prejudice, our immigration status restrictions prevented us from attending our grandfather's and uncle's funerals. My mother couldn't bid farewell to her dying father or console her family in Pakistan. I vividly remember watching my grandfather's funeral through a phone call, a heartbreaking experience for me and my family. 2 years later, we faced a similar situation when my father's brother succumbed to cancer. As the years passed, the prospect of more funerals via FaceTime weighs on us, compounding our emotional burden. These hardships have left us bitter and discontent with the life we have built in America. And I see how tired my father is and sense the isolation that my own mother experiences due to her limited understanding of the unfamiliar customs of this country. And despite my father having earned his bachelor's and coming to the U.S. with a full-time office job, he now works as an Uber driver to support his family. And there's deep pain in knowing people get into his car and look down on him without even knowing anything about him or the sacrifices that he has made for his family. But having the opportunity to be here today and share my story enables me to better understand and come to terms with our experiences, while also advocating for my family and fellow immigrants who have faced similar challenges.
As a happy you said that, as we spoke about our student, of violence in home countries, economic exploitation, racial discrimination, to refine home children by story of state of violence by police, employees, the victim criminalized with their collective resistance. Working with stories from this archive provoked my desire to explore my own criminality. In May 2019, I crossed the US-Mexican border in anti-Dominican concern, which automatically put me in one category of naturalized immigrant. A naturalized immigrant is a who crossed the border unlawfully, who admit illegally and has overstayed their visa. My ambition to participate in dealing with social issues has not changed, but I soon realized that's a vivid attitude by the state authority. My activism could lead to my deportation. They started opening unlawful immigrant or just being an immigrant get a trait and value easily transcended by US citizens. I've learned to being criminalized is intense. After the killing of George Floyd by the police officer Derek Chauvin in 2020, I was like millions of New Yorkers revolted by the social injustice and the violence perpetrated by law enforcement and the government that imposed it. When mass protests erupted in New York City, I had this strong desire to join the movements in the street and to give voice to my trade. But I was reminded by my sister that my immigrant status will lead a problem to me. It can lead to my deportation. That can cause the loss of my permanent residency status, something I have never obtained yet. This fear of deportation purposely created by US laws and policies have placed a measure to immigrants who, like other US citizens, want to demand a more equitable society, with challenges to freedom, poverty, opulence, and slavery. Poverty, citizenship, racism, and potential deportation harms my everyday fears, like many immigrants. Last year, while I was doing Uber Eats, I was approached by a group of food delivery workers who was trying to organize delivery workers to come together to protest for improvements in working conditions. Their protest is vast. They need to organize a group. They asked me to get in touch with other African workers. I overcome my own certain anxiety, and then I was faced by the challenge of an equitable, a more equitable and only comfortable, overwhelming fear of voice by my fellow West African immigrants. As soon as I started getting in touch with them, I found out the terror of state enforced consequence, its punishment for organizing, for safer conditions and living wages, was created through a movement designed to recognize the dignity of Cuban workers. This fear of stepping off the saddle has their consequence for my community, and yet, the desired outcome for U.S. economic system that they can support the workers. I have seen delivery worker hit by a car but not called the ambulance because he's undocumented. I have seen food delivery workers by bikes being stolen. They didn't report to police because of the fear of possible consequences from the immigration status. They fear endorsing clear and law enforcement prevent the community from organizing for better wages and conditions. The system has been carefully built to violate these violent people without consequence. So often justice is deferred for a community to encourage to remain invisible silent. You are reminded at the opening of story that's protection and putting marginalized groups against each other. So establish desire to profit and capital.
Our journey began as college students, initially tackling what seemed like just another assignment. However, as the past few years have unfolded, each one of us has transformed into a dedicated researcher. We have all undergone a profound change in perspective as we learn to critically evaluate the steps we've taken to complete this project. We have meticulously edited and transcribed interviews, diligently analyzed recurring themes and patterns within these interviews, organized these themes into chapters, and pinpointed relevant quotes to support our findings. We then proceed to provide in-depth elaboration of these quotes.
For us, this project is an important form of activism. I now look at myself as a person who assisted to advocate for my fellow immigrants throughout their hardship and journey to the United States. The stories we put out there are not the everyday stories that people normally read about. Therefore, advocating and spreading these simultaneously heartbreaking and uplifting stories will help the nation value the immigrants of which they are so dependent. Conducting and curating interviews as an immigrant myself put me in the shoes of my interviewee and allowed us both to find strength in the community of our journeys. Further, because I and many of the interviewees at Guttman are immigrants ourselves, we designed better questions informed by our own experiences and could empathize with immigrant